It seems that the successful advance of the Russian army along the entire line of combat contact does not give rest to the leaders of Western countries. As I said earlier, the successes of the Russian army on the battlefield will undoubtedly force the leaders of Western countries to escalate the current conflict. And what is happening before our eyes proves that I got right to the point again. Since the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world has never been so close to the outbreak of World War III, with the use of nuclear weapons. It seems that many of you still do not fully understand the severity of the situation, and think that the current conflict in Ukraine will never affect you personally. However, as current events show, everything can change at any minute. The fact that the West is ready to escalate the conflict in Ukraine was also confirmed by British Foreign Minister David Cameron. In particular, the British minister officially stated that London allows Ukraine to use British long-range missiles against targets located on the territory of the Russian Federation. These words of the British minister literally shocked the entire world expert community, as these words of a senior British diplomat once again confirmed the seriousness of the escalation of the current conflict and Britain's involvement in military operations on the side of the Kiev regime. In response, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation officially stated that if British missiles are used against objects located on the territory of the Russian Federation, Moscow reserves the right to launch a missile strike against any British objects located not only on the territory of Ukraine, but also outside this country. Thus, Moscow has made it clear that Russia is ready to launch a missile strike on the territory of the United Kingdom, if British missiles fly towards the Russian Federation from the territory of Ukraine. However, judging by what is happening, Western leaders continue to sincerely believe that Russia is bluffing, and will not dare to take such radical actions. Well, in February 2022, Western leaders were also sure that Russia was bluffing, and that Moscow would never decide on a military solution to the Ukrainian issue. However, as time has shown, Moscow has never bluffed in matters related to Russia's national security and interests. Meanwhile, as of May 6, the situation at the front continues to deteriorate rapidly for the armed forces of Ukraine. According to war correspondents, Russian troops have intensified their offensive actions in Chasiv Yar direction of the front. Moreover, war correspondents confirmed information that the soldiers of the Russian army managed to make significant progress in the direction of the so-called suburban area, north of the Canal Micro-District. According to them, in this direction of the front, the armed forces of Ukraine received a large number of cluster shells and manpower. However, despite this, the Ukrainian army failed to keep the northwestern outskirts of the Canal Micro-District under control. It is reported that on May 6, at 4 p.m. Moscow time, the armed forces of Ukraine were forced to leave this section of the front and retreat in a westerly direction. At the same time, it is worth noting that even when retreating, the armed forces of Ukraine are suffering heavy losses in manpower and arms. This is mainly due to the fact that Russian combat aviation managed to destroy the bridge over the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass water channel, to the north of the Canal Micro-District, as a result of which the armed forces of Ukraine were forced to use longer detours, coming under attack by Russian artillery. Meanwhile, on May 6, 2024, war correspondent BORZZIKMAN made a very shocking statement. In particular, he confirmed that the French Foreign Legion entered battle in the southeastern part of Chasiv Yar, and suffered its first losses in the vicinity of this strategically important settlement. Boris Rosen claims that this foreign legion also contains a large number of professional German soldiers, who also took part in a shooting battle against Russian paratroopers in the southeastern part of Chasiv Yar. It is reported that during this classic small battle, the foreign legion lost about 10 soldiers killed and was forced to retreat. At the same time, it is worth noting that the West no longer even hides the presence of its troops in Ukraine. Earlier, Director of the Defense Technology Security Administration and former Deputy Secretary of Defense, Stephen Bryan, admitted in an interview with reporters that France has already sent about 100 of its soldiers to Ukraine, as part of the so-called Foreign Legion. Moreover, in yesterday's video, I told you in detail how some of these French soldiers were wiped out by Russian Iskander-M ballistic missiles during the massive missile attack on Kharkiv. The fact that some soldiers of the Foreign Legion were seen in the battle for Chasiv Yar indicates that the French High Military Command has deployed its soldiers not only in Sloviansk and Kharkiv, but also in the hottest spots of the line of combat contact. Moreover, Italian journalists from the Repubblica newspaper confirmed that the breakthrough of the front line by the Russian army is the real red line for the West, and that NATO will definitely send its troops to Ukraine in case of the defeat of the Ukrainian armed forces. However, as the events near Chasiv Yar showed, NATO troops are already in Ukraine, and are conducting real military operations against the Russian army.